Okay, in this video we're going to show off a small little feature that we've added to one of our reports. For the work session review and work session costing reports, we added a feature that would allow users to show the spec information that's related to the router that the employee logged into. So there's a couple of reasons you may want to do this and add this field to the report. So we'll talk a little bit about kind of that new field and why we added it, but also at the same time maybe talk about some other features of Realtrac that you may not be familiar with and try to introduce you to some other ideas and some other concepts that you can take and deploy at your organization as well. So we'll talk about one specific idea of using it, but we have a whole host of customers kind of using some of these features for other ideas. So what I'm going to show off is currently, you can see I've got an employee logged in here to Op 70 for this specific job. And I know that's actually a count and ship operation for our people on the floor. So let's just take a look at this really quick. You can already tell from it being in red that we've gone over our time estimate. So in a scenario like this, we could see that maybe our employee on the floor would want to add a note about why it ran late, if there was a specific issue, and we'll see some other things that we could do. So let's just take a look at this job real quick just to see what's going on. So I'm going to open up, take a look at our job, 1650. Alright, so we're building 16 units of this hoverboard, which just made up, of course, and we're going to ship 15 to our customer. We've already processed some, we can see, but we want to ship a few more out to our customer here at this moment in time. So the first thing I'm going to show off before we get into the work session review is, let's say I have a policy that when my employee on the floor does a shipment, he's going to make note, he or she is going to make note of the tracking material, the tracking number, and put it into the spec so that we've got a permanent record here within Realtrac of the shipment. You may have another process to do this and another place to put it, but this is just one idea and one way to use kind of this overall concept that we're going to talk about. So I'm going to have my employee here, who has just finished packaging, counting, and shipping, let's say 5 more units, make note of that. So Matt here is going to add a little bit of spec information before we do a log off. So we're going to click on the add spec, and we have a policy that they're going to add the tracking number. So Matt first here is going to add UPS tracking number 1DX, and I'll add some shenanigan numbers. That looks kind of like a UPS tracking number. And then maybe the employee will also want to add some notes about why this ran late. So we lost power in the shipping. Something like that. So we're kind of adding a note back into the router line in the spec area. The spec area can be printed out on router reports. When you dupe a job, the spec information comes along, so there may be some more information. So if there's a systemic problem that may occur again, maybe they would want to add a note that we want to adjust the time such that our estimates are more reasonable for the next time around, along with our tracking information here. Cool enough? So we'll save that in. If we go take a look at this router now, we'll see that that information will be plugged in on there. If we log off, we're going to confirm our work sessions. Let's just take a look to make sure it's on there. So we go into our router. You can see Op 70 here has now got a blue color, which indicates we have some spec that's been added to it. So we've got our tracking number along with some details about why it took so long with our estimate compared to our actual. So that's some information that management may want to use when they're looking at this job, or if they dupe this job, or what have you. And we've also got our tracking. So this is why it may be cool when we go to run a work session review report, which we can hone in on a week's worth of work or a specific job or what have you. I mean, we may want to see this tracking number information in that report, or details about why things took longer or quicker than they expected. So we've added that field to be available, being able to see this when you're looking at a work session report. So let's show that off, and it's going to require a little bit more of advanced customization than we've shown in some of our other videos in terms of our reporting engine. So let's try that out and see how it looks. So in order to get started, we'll take a look at our work sessions. You can see we've got a few. I'm going to open that up a little bit more. I want to look at all of 1650. just for fun. And this job's been going on for a bit, so you can see we've got some operations from before and our current ones. So let's take a look at the report just as it is now, our stock report, and then we'll customize it here in a second. Under the work session reports, we have two different types, one that's kind of a review and one that has costs, that has more of a breakdown of what each individual work session cost. You need to have the costing permissions in order to see the dollar figures on that report, whereas anybody can run the work session review report and see what's going on. So let's just take a look at that one real quick. Preview it. And we can see we get a breakdown of every time somebody logged in. I happen to minimize this one or filter it to only our job 1650 and for the past year roughly. So you can see all the operations that have logged in and how long each operation took and the total amount of time and all that sort of good stuff. So let's say I wanted to customize this report and also show those spec information. So I can get some cool data on this report that may not be there if it so works in my workflow of my company and all that sort of good stuff. So I'm going to customize this report by clicking on the Customize button, and we'll call it spec, something pretty obvious and simple. So we click OK, and it's going to take a second for our engine to come up that lets us customize the reports. So you can see here we've got kind of a blank report with some fields and information here along the right-hand side and some basic details here on the left. So what I'm going to do is this main content here, we can see the report's broken down into three sections roughly. We've got this top one, which is just a text, that's kind of our title. Then we've got another chunk here that is shows us what filters we've added for the report. So in this case, when we run it, it would show that we filtered it just to job 1650. And then we've got kind of the main body here, which is, if you look over here on the left, is actually a table, what our reporting engine considers a table, which means we're going to put one or more rows worth of data in there. If we double click on this table section, we get another control here that pops up that kind of lets us define what we see in the header in terms of just these strings that define what the fields look like or are called, which you can change any of these if you want. If you would rather have it say, I just double click there. If you'd rather have it say job NO period maybe rather than job £, just because of your personal preference, no problem, you can customize it that way. I'm going to double click on the table here again. So instead of the header, we want to look at the data line. So you can see right now for each work session that we have on this report, we're going to put one line worth of data, and that's going to show the workstation number, the workstation name. Basically all the cells are going to line up perfectly with the header above it. So when we have a spec information, we probably don't want to just create another cell here on the right side. It's going to have a whole lot of text quite often, and it's going to try to crush or cram a lot of information into a relatively small cell, if you will. So kind of the idea I'm envisioning is if we do have some spec information, we're going to add a second line underneath this main one that shows the spec information. And then we'll just only show that if there is any spec information, so we won't get kind of an unsightly, ungainly line, if you will, beneath the line. So what I want is rows and rows and rows of sessions. And then if our employee did add some information in terms of from the shop floor communicating some information back up to us in the form of that spec, I want to print it out on this report because I think that'll be cool and it'll help my company out and all that sort of good stuff. So what I'm going to do, instead of adding just another cell, which I could do here and right click and say add a new column, I actually want to add another line altogether. So I'm going to do the same thing and right click on this line definition one and choose to append a new table line. So we get an option here, and we can get into this more in depth in the future, but I'm just going to start out with an empty line to show you the entire process. You can kind of automate some of this, but we'll do it the hard way just so it's clear what we're doing and why. So as soon as I do that, you can see we have this second line. So now we have two lines, but there's no columns or anything yet defined. So in my vision, maybe, I want to put a little space, maybe, that's the width of our workstation number one, to offset the text just a little bit, and then maybe have a row that runs across the whole way at that point in time. So it's going to go from workstation name, job number, we'll have one big cell that we can put all this information. I'm just warning you because I'm about to do that, so we'll see kind of how that's going to get done. So basically I want to create an empty cell below this one that's the same width as our workstation number, but just is blank. Just as a little bit of spacer and offset, and then we can take a look at the spec data. So I'm going to right click here on line definition 2, and choose to append a new column. So we're going to add a new column into this new line. This one is going to be empty. So how we indicate emptiness to our reporting engine, we're going to use double quotes to indicate that we're going to tell it a specific string as opposed to a name of a field that we want to add. And I'm just going to put a space and then another quote, which is just basically going to put a space always into this first cell. We'll see it expand out here when we put information in there in a second. Now, just to make sure everything lines up, I actually want to make sure the width of this cell is going to be the same as this top one, because I kind of want to line up and look real pretty. So when I clicked on the workstation number cell, over here on the right, if I scroll down, we'll see that it's defined to be 0.396 inches wide. So I'm going to mimic that in this cell that's going to be directly underneath it. Right now you can see it's set to 1.18, but if I just type in 0.396, oops, 396, and hit enter, we can see, if you can faintly see, that we've created kind of another line that has the same width of workstation, the workstation column. I'm going to double click on our table again to continue working on line 2 because I mistakenly closed it, but we haven't lost anything. Alright, so now after I just get a little bit of an indent, I'm going to add another cell, and then we're going to kind of stretch it out and make it wide and tell it what data we want to go in there. So similar to before, I'm going to choose the one that we just added by left clicking on it. Then I'll right click and choose to append another column. If we wanted to put like a picture or a barcode, you can see here we've got a couple different types, we can do that as well. But for now, I just want to put some text in there that we're going to put some data in. So I'm going to choose the text type. So we get our option here to edit the table. Now this is a field that we've made available in this latest release of ours. So in order to check that out, I'm going to expand our fields right up here. And this one is called Router Spec. Now if you're ever curious what any of these fields mean, within your desktop and in your start menu, we have a folder that's called Realtrac PDF Manuals, and within that we have a folder called Reports. And we will tell you the name of every report, and we also will say every field that's available on that report. This report obviously has a handful of fields that are shown on it, maybe 8 or 10, but you can see we actually have quite a few additional fields that we can choose to add to this report if we wanted to. So whenever you have a question about, I wish there was just more data on this one specific report, you can always customize it and take a look at the fields that are available and just add them on there. So I want to add this router spec one data field onto this report. So I've selected it and I'm going to choose OK. Let me try that again. I'm going to double click it to select it. Double click, and you can see we've added it down here into the section below. Now, the problem now is we've got two, which you can barely see. We'll expand this up in a second. Actually, let's zoom in just a little bit, just so we can see a little bit closer. You can see we've got two cells. This first one here that we defined that always is a blank. Then we've got another one that's just really tiny. So that kind of defeated the purpose. We wanted to make it stretch out really wide so we could look at it. So I'm going to double click this again and stretch this out. So I know we have an 8.5 by 11 sheet that's landscape, so I know we've got roughly maybe 10 inches to work with. I'll make it 9 inches just to roughly ballpark it. So we'll do 9.0. Before I hit OK, I'll note that we can also play around with our font if we scroll up a little bit further. Right now it's set to be Arial. I believe all of our reports use the Segul, I believe is how it's called, font face, so I'm going to choose that. And you can see how it's typed in case I butchered it very terribly. And I'll leave it 12 point. I assume that's kind of roughly the size that we're going for, but we can always tweak it afterwards if need be. Alright, so what we've done so far is we've added this other line. We've right-clicked on this one, on our initial line, and chose to append a new table line. And then within that line, we've kind of added two cells, or columns, if you will. One that's just a spacer, that's kind of always empty, just to offset our data a little bit. And then the actual spec data. So let's see how far this gets us and how it looks, and we can tweak it a little bit more if we want. And we also changed the font. So I'm going to say OK. We'll zoom back out to the page width, and you can see it didn't stretch all the way over, but close enough, and we'll see how it looks. So I'm going to save the report and then run it, and we can come back and tweak it if we want to play around a little more. So I saved our report, I closed out. You can see the software has switched us over automatically to run the new report. Work session with Spec is what we call it. Okay, so we've customized the report. Let's take a look at it now here and preview it on our screen and see how it looks and if it's what we were kind of going for. So I'm going to hit the preview button to bring up a copy of this report on the screen. Alright, so it looks a little different than what we had before. Before, each time we had a work session, we would just have one row's worth of information. Then it would all get totaled up at the bottom. But we went in and added a second row, which is only going to show up if we have spec information. So you can see here we had to log into the shipping station for Op 70, and our employee added some information from the shop floor via that spec feature that we showed earlier, the tracking number. So, my company decided I want to add this field onto this report. Now I can see the shipping information or information on why we went short or long on an operation right on this report. Very cool stuff. If we pop over to the second page, we can also see another employee working on Op 20 added some measurements. Either our customer asked us for this step to take some samples, or maybe as part of our internal process, we did some sampling and added some spec information as well on this operation. So we can kind of see that this is a new report that has added some new fields that are of interest to me. So that is overall the great plan that we've tried to achieve here in this demo and trying to add this feature for our customers. So what we did today is we quickly covered the process of adding spec information from the floor, which is maybe something that you weren't familiar with, or a new concept that you could use in some manner. And once we added that spec information to the floor, we came in to the work session review report or the work session costing report. They both have the field available. And we customized it. And we did it a little bit more adventurously or a little more advanced than some of the other videos that we've shown. We decided to add another line to every session, which is only showing when we have spec information. We tweaked it to make it a little longer. I could see I could stretch out a little bit further if I wanted it to align. And then we saved it and previewed it. So we kind of covered a couple new ideas and showed you how to customize reports in a more advanced manner. So hopefully there was some value in either the new features that we're showing off or how to customize these reports in a more advanced manner. This feature in terms of the new field for this report actually came to us from a customer request. So as always, please let us know if you have any new features that would help make the software better for you. We would love to hear them, and we'd love to implement them and get them in place at your organization so that you're working more efficiently, gathering more data, shipping more product, and making more money. As always, let us know if there's anything we can do to help. Thank you very much for your time.